All right, I'm going to call this the first official video of the Patreon exclusive build of the Warhammer 40k Basilisk. If you've been keeping up with the vlogs, I'm on and off over several weeks, maybe a couple of months, I don't remember. Just kind of been showing some of the initial construction process. And at the time I was doing it, I really didn't know. I hadn't decided yet, is this going to be a Patreon build or is this going to be a YouTube build? Or is this going to be just a project that I build and then put in a box and wait to paint it later on and decide what to do with it then? But the more I worked on it, the more little details I added to it, the more fun I was having with it. And then just in terms of scheduling and things like that, I thought this would be a good Patreon build. So this is kind of catching up to where it's at now. Now, if you haven't looked at all of those vlogs, the basic notion of all of them is I built it up to this point to get it ready to be primed. I've got the tracks off of it, which I modified to be able to put on later. They're the, what do you call them, the link and length tracks. They got some big runs of tracks and then little individual ones. And I just laid them out flat on the table, glued them together. When the glue had set just enough to hold everything but still be pliable, I applied them to the tank and wrapped them around, let them dry that way, then popped them right back off. And then I marked which section they go on, so I'll be able to slide those on real easy. It'll just allow me to paint the tracks separately. I've also left off this gun deck can slide out, and because that's going to be painted differently. It's going to be a lot more silver than the rest of the hull. The hull is going to be a two-color camo, kind of a green and brown. It's early in the morning, and this piece also comes off, so I'll do all of those separately like this. And it comes with one figure, Major Shouty, and I wanted a couple more, so I had a Acadian command set. Now it's got this guy who's supposed to be a medic, and that's supposed to be like a bandage in his hand, and he's supposed to be pointing. I'm going to make it look more like, I'm going to paint it up to look kind of like a map or a book, like he's reading the directions for firing the gun, you know, and he's going to be pointing at something. And this guy is, I don't know if this is supposed to be a radio or a loudspeaker in the game, but I'm going to pretend it's a radio, and because we always know that artillery is going to have a radio operator on it to call in the coordinates for the fire. I textured it like a proper armor model with Mr. Surfacer, and next step, of course, will be to prime it up and start the painting. Now, my plan for this build, and as with the SAFS, I don't know how many episodes I'm going to take it. I don't know if it's going to go as many as the SAFS went. I don't know that there's that much to do because I've already got it assembled, so I'm not covering that officially. But I'm going to get it primed, get it painted, and my plan is to do weathering on this that's going to be more like military modeling than Warhammer modeling, just because I just want to do it that way. I mean, I like the Warhammer style of doing things, the GW style. I've had a lot of fun when I built a Warhammer kit and did the edge highlighting or dry brushing, and you know, that exaggerated style of painting, and you know, didn't worry as much about, okay, does this look realistic? On this one though, I want to do it as if it's a real armor piece, and try and be more realistic with the overall look of it rather than going for a GW look. We'll see how that turns out. I'll get the opportunity to paint these figures, and that should be interesting because that's still something that I struggle with, painting figures. So I'll have the opportunity to do that. But next step that I'm going to have, now that I've rambled on but hopefully caught everybody up on where I'm at with this, is I want to get this primed And then I'm gonna do the painting as brush painting. I like doing that, especially with the camo. I just enjoy the brush painting, and then we'll see how that comes out. So let me get this primed. All right, I primed everything in the Mr. Mahogany primer. I did this through my airbrush. It's getting a little too cold to go out in the garage and prime with the rattle can. And just a note, I'm not priming with the rattle can because I'm worried about the effect of the cold on the primer. I've primed in the cold before, and I'm only out there a little while, and it has worked just fine for me. Now, it doesn't get super cold here in North Carolina. You know, I've gone out and primed when it was in the mid-30s. But the reason I didn't go do that this time is I'm getting old and I'm getting tired of the cold. My arthritis is getting worse, especially in my hands, and cold weather does not do me good. So this time I didn't go out there and prime, not because I was worried about the quality of the prime, but because old man. So I went with the airbrush to get this on here. And I just went with the dark brown just because I'm going to be painting this thing, base painting this thing with Xandri dust, a tan color. So it'll just be easier to cover that up. I added a little bit of black to the mix, just black Mr. Color paint for this back half of it. On the photos that they have on the Games Workshop website, they show this as being the green color, basically from here back, and then this deck is silver. So I did that a little darker just to facilitate painting those two colors. Now for the actual painting, I'm going to be using the Artist's Opus style pounce method, but I'm using a makeup brush. Not that I have anything against their brushes, this is just what I have. This is a new one that I've been using. It's from a set that I already had, but I like these. They're very flat, very nice. A little more stiff than the others I've been using, and they're perfect for this. Now, the reason I want to do it this way, one, is it's a little faster than just regular brush painting, but it will leave a slight additional texture to the surface. Now I've thinned it with water because I don't want too much texture. I've thinned it with water, and that's going to mean that, one, I'll need to get it on in a couple of coats, but two, it won't go on so thick that it leaves obvious paint texture, because that's what I'm trying to avoid. I just want it to not be obvious paint texture. But a lot of the texturing that I put on, I realized after I put on the Mr. Surfacer that the original texturing I'd put on was kind of lost in the mix. It smoothed it out quite a bit. So this will just kind of hopefully bring that back a little bit. Doing it this way, and the paint is thinned fairly heavily. You can see how transparent it is when I'm putting it on. And this allows you to control how much, if you watch Lincoln Wright, you've heard him talk about poke through. This allows you to control how much poke through there is. If you want some of that poke through chipping, then you can leave it like this, and it gives it a more weathered and worn appearance than it would if you just used a traditional brush or an airbrush and went for full coverage with it. Now I could have dry brushed this. I'm not doing a dry brushing right now, even though this brush is often associated with dry brushing. I'm not doing a dry brush. So if you wanted to do a more traditional dry brush approach, or something that's more of a hybrid of an overbrush approach, you could, and that will leave in various dark details and textures and things like that. But I just like this because it leaves a slightly mottled, worn appearance, but you get great control over what the final outcome is. You can even, and I may do this, you can even, after you get this first coat on, add some lighter color to your base paint and then begin putting on a second coat and stipple that on a little lighter, and what you'll end up with is a more weathered, already faded look to the paint. So there's a lot of ways of getting this done using these brushes. All right, I got that all painted up. Wait, I just noticed an area that I need to get a little better. It took me about 2.5 coats to do this. I let one dry and then put on a second one. And you notice I'm using a different brush here. When I'm using a big one like this, this will cover 95% of what needs to be painted. But there's going to be some places you just can't get to stuff. So I just keep something like this on standby. And I just, in my workflow, I'm not petite with my workflow. If I'm working with this one, when I need the other one, I just toss it down, grab the other one up. When I'm done, I toss it down, grab the other one back. I mean, it's pretty rough workflow, but you can see the finish that it leaves, and you can start seeing that texture on there, both from the paint and from the previous primer. And you'll note that this is a little patchy. That's okay. And what I'm going to do is give this time to dry. This is early in the morning. It's a Friday. I'm going to come home this evening. I'll look at it, and if I want to give it some additional coats, I'll get this tan color all done. And then probably in the next video is looking like I'll do the green stripes across it. And I'll use a similar application approach, but because I'll need to be doing the camo pattern, I'll tighten it up a little bit, probably use a brush something like this to do that. We'll see. But yeah, this dries pretty quick. You can see on the sides how it looks. It's not 100% saturated, but I'm okay with that because this thing is going to be weathered up pretty good. And if you're doing this and you want to introduce a little bit of modulation, then just get more paint on the upturned surfaces than you do on the rest of the model. You can have more on the upper parts along the sides than you would on the lower parts like that. So you can get in a lot of effects. And if you combine some dry brushing all along through this, you can do some quite sophisticated things with just these big fluffy brushes. If you've ever watched Byron on Artis Opus, you'll know what I'm talking about. He does some great stuff. All right, I think I've rambled on long enough, so I'm going to call this a video. This is the first official episode in the Basilisk episode, so it is a Patreon exclusive. Thank you for being a patron and supporting the work that I do, and I hope that you enjoy these exclusive videos and that you get some benefit from them. So in the next one, we'll continue painting. Well, I'll continue painting and you'll be watching, but I'll continue painting the camouflage on and getting this Basilisk finished up. So happy day to you, friends. Bye-bye.